This episode kicks off our not yet to be determined how many episode series on functional programming. Functional programming offers us easier to understand programs, which in general means programs with fewer bugs. I like that, and I hope you will too. But to be effective with functional programming, regardless of the language, there are certain timeless functions we need to be aware of. In this episode, we're going to look at one of those, map, and see how it works and how it makes our code cleaner. Let's set up our problem. Suppose that we had just done a query to a database and returned a bunch of objects that had a lot of properties on them. This is all good, but for display purposes, we only want to get their names right now. We're trying to collect an array that has only their names. Here's how we might do that. So we make this empty array and then we iterate through all the members, adding in just the names. And we could see if it works. Let's add a console.log in there. And it does. So we're done, right? Well, not quite. I don't like to write code this way because it's confusing our concerns here. First, we have what it means to iterate through an array. We explicitly code this in, and any place where we iterate through an array, we have to repeat this code. Isn't the whole point of abstraction to take common behavior and pull it out into a single place? This style doesn't do that. Second, we have to spell out exactly where we're storing the names as we're collecting them. This is another implementation detail that distracts from what we're trying to actually do. Third, we have what we actually wanted, which is how do we actually extract the name property. This is the core concern, but it's buried underneath all this cruft. In fact, most of the characters we see here have nothing to do with our core concern. Let's see how map cleans this up. So let's start a new file and copy over our DB output. First off, map is a function present on arrays. So calling it is going to start off looking like this, just greatoldOnes.map. Its first parameter, and only one we care about, is a function. Map will call this function exactly once and in order for each item in our array. It will pass 3 arguments when it does so. First, it passes the current item. So in our case, on the first iteration, item will refer to the object with name Cthulhu. Next, it passes the index of the current item. Array indices are 0 based in JavaScript, so on the first iteration, this would be 0. Lastly, it passes the entire array we called map on, so for every iteration we'd get the full array. In general, we only care about the first parameter, though from time to time the second will matter, so we'll just drop those other 2 out of our call. We've already abstracted out that first concern. Notice that our code is no longer distracted by how to iterate over the array. Next, let's flesh out this function. Map is going to create a new array for us. It will be the same length as our original array, and its members will be whatever we return from this function that we passed and in order. We want to get just the name from each of our database entries. Each time map calls our function, it hands us a single entry, so we simply return the name property from it. Lastly, since this returns a new array to us, we'll need to put it into a variable. If we wanted to get clever, we could have put this name extracting function into its own definition and just pass that function into map. Now in our actual code flow, we don't have any distracting details. So let's look again at how map works. It starts with our array, and in our case we have our array greatoldOnes with 5 entries. We also have a function called pluckName that just returns the name property from whatever it is given. As a quick note, notice how testable pluckName is now. Before we didn't have this concept separated from the loop iteration, so you could only have tested the whole thing all at once. Anyway, we have the array in the function, and now we call map. Map will set up some new array and then start looping over greatoldOnes. We still need the loop, but it's abstracted out into a different function. Then it will call pluckName for each item and stuff that result into the new array. That new array's 0th element will be the name from our 0th item. Its first element will be the name of our first item, and so forth until it runs out. Then it hands us back the array. And that's all there is to map. By using it, the flow of our actual business logic is clearer because we're not distracted by the details of iteration and how to store our temporary values. The actual line of code where we build this array reads very clearly, and we get the added bonus of making our transform more testable. Map is a workhorse function that we're going to use a lot. There are other important functions in our functional programming vocabulary, and we'll get to those in future episodes. Until then, happy coding.